I still remember the sound of his laugh. Not the polite kind. Not even the cruel kind. It was the kind that echoed, the kind people join in on, even when they're not sure why they're laughing. Wait, you're serious? Derek leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised, a smirk spreading across his face. You really think you're going to build a tech company? You? We were at a bar in Chicago, a rooftop place some of our former classmates picked for the little college reunion we hadn't asked for. Everyone looked a little more tired, a little more married, a little more bitter. I had gone because, I don't know, maybe part of me still wanted to be seen by them. Maybe I thought they'd be proud. I had been working on my startup quietly for almost a year. I hadn't said much during dinner. But someone, I think Amy, asked what I'd been doing since quitting my job. I told them, carefully, honestly. I'm building something, a software tool for women entrepreneurs. It's still early, but we've got a prototype and that's when Derek burst out laughing. Okay, hold up, he said, waving his hand like I was being ridiculous. Ava, come on. You dropped out of corporate 6 months ago. You think the next step is running a tech company? He looked around the table, as if asking for witnesses to this absurdity. Tell me you're joking. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice. The worst part wasn't even him. It was that no one stopped him. Amy looked away. Jamal sipped his drink. Someone chuckled nervously. Not one person said, "Hey, that's out of line," or "Actually, that sounds amazing." Not one. I clenched my hands under the table. My fingers were ice cold. I mean, it's cute, Derek said, finally calming down. You've always had big ideas. But maybe stick to marketing? Or something safer. Just saying. I nodded. That was all I did. Not because I agreed, but because I had learned long ago that arguing with people like Derek is useless. I excused myself a few minutes later. Said I had an early call. I walked 4 blocks before I even realized I was crying. That night, I opened my laptop and stared at the pitch deck I had been working on for weeks. Slide 1. She builds a smarter platform for female founders. I hovered over the delete button. I didn't press it. But I also didn't open that file again for 3 weeks. It's strange, the way one moment can coil around your dreams like barbed wire. I knew Derek. We weren't close, but we had classes together in college. He was loud, sure, but also charming. People liked him. He was the kind of guy who always had the last word, always got picked to lead group projects, even if someone like me, had done all the work. Back in school, he had laughed when I ran for student council. He laughed again when I said I wanted to intern at a startup in New York. He once told me I was too intense, as if ambition was something embarrassing. I thought I had left that behind. But here he was again, years later, laughing at my future like it was a punchline. The next morning, I made coffee and sat on the floor of my apartment. I looked around at the whiteboards, sticky notes, notebooks, all the things that made up the skeleton of my dream. And I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to ask since quitting my job. What if they're right? What if I'm not the kind of person who builds something great? What if I'm just another woman with a Google Doc and no real plan? But right before I could spiral, something shifted. A memory came back. It was from high school, senior year. My economics teacher, Mr. Jennings, asked the class, "What's the difference between a doer and a dreamer?" People threw out answers. Execution. Discipline. Money. He nodded, then pointed at me. Ava. I hesitated. I think dreamers wait for permission. Doers don't. He smiled. Exactly. That sentence had lived somewhere deep in me, covered in dust. But now, it lit up like fire. That night, I reopened the deck. I didn't delete it. I rewrote it. Slide 1. She builds because nobody gave us a seat at the table, so we're building our own. 3 months later, I pitched my product at a local startup showcase in Chicago. 5 VCs said no. 1 said maybe. That maybe turned into a coffee meeting. That coffee meeting turned into a check. 6 months after that, I launched the beta version of She Builds. It crashed the first week, but the feedback was gold. I tweaked the back end. I hired my first engineer, a woman from Detroit who had been laid off from a tech giant and was tired of being the only female on every team. We worked 16-hour days. I slept in the office. I burned out twice. But I didn't stop. The next time I saw Derek, it was in my email inbox. Subject: Application for Product Manager role at SheBuilds. Sender: DerekWalsh@gmail.com. My heart stopped. I opened it. There it was. Dear Ava, I recently came across your company and was impressed by the mission and growth of SheBuilds. He had attached his resume, a cover letter, a link to his portfolio. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I laughed. Not out of cruelty. Not out of bitterness. But because life has a sense of humor. The man who laughed at my dreams was now asking me for a job. My story didn't begin with Derek's laugh. It began in a quiet little home on the south side of Milwaukee, where silence was louder than any insult, and expectations were sky-high even when praise was absent. My parents were good people, hardworking, practical, but they weren't dreamers. My dad, Thomas Collins, worked at a parts manufacturing plant for 34 years. Same routine, same blue jumpsuit, same lunchbox. My mom, Helen, ran the household like a machine, efficient, clean, and silent. And then there was my brother, Daniel, 3 years older, star athlete, class president, the golden boy. If Daniel brought home a B+, it was because the teacher didn't like him. If I brought home an A-, Mom would say, "Try harder next time, Ava." It wasn't cruel. It was just how things were. My whole life, I was this smart one, but smart in a way that felt invisible. No trophies. No touchdowns. No bragging rights. Just books, ideas, and this burning desire to build something that mattered. When I told my parents I wanted to go into tech, my mom furrowed her brow. "You mean like computers?" she asked.
Yeah.
"I want to build things. Apps, tools, stuff that helps people." She blinked slowly. "You don't want to be a teacher?" I shook my head.
No.
"I want to create." She smiled the way someone smiles when you tell them you want to be an astronaut. Well, that's different. When Daniel got accepted into Stanford on a football scholarship, we threw a huge party. When I got accepted into Northwestern on a partial academic scholarship, we had dinner at Applebee's. My dad said, "Proud of you, kid." And that was that. Still, I didn't complain.
I knew they meant well.
I knew they just didn't understand the world I wanted to live in. College was the first time I felt possibility. I joined women in tech. I met people who thought the same way I did. I coded late into the night, competed in hackathons, interned every summer. But I also noticed something else. The rooms were still filled with guys like Derek.
Charming.
Confident.
Careless.
They would take over group projects and speak over women during pitch sessions. Professors would nod when they talked. When I spoke, I was too intense, too idealistic, too ambitious. I swallowed 100 little slights over those 4 years. And each time, I told myself, prove them wrong. Just keep going. After college, I landed a decent job at a tech marketing firm in Chicago. It paid well. The hours were long, but it felt safe. For a while, I convinced myself that was enough. I worked quietly, showed up early, stayed late. I helped others shine. Even trained my manager's nephew, who later got promoted above me. When I brought it up to HR, they said, "We understand your frustration, but promotion decisions are complex. Maybe next time." I went home that night and stared at myself in the mirror. My face looked tired. Not from work, but from holding back. I didn't want next time. I wanted now. That was the day I started building SheBuilds. Back home, my family didn't really understand what I was doing. "So you left your job for what?" my dad asked one Sunday. "I'm working on something of my own. A startup." He raised an eyebrow. "Ava, we're not rich people. You need stability, not dreams." My brother, Daniel, laughed. "Sounds risky. You sure you can handle that?" I wanted to scream, but I just said, "Yes, I'm sure." There's silence after that was louder than any argument. Every family dinner after that became a subtle interrogation. "Still doing that app thing? Any money coming yet?" You know, your cousin Megan just got promoted at her bank. Even when I hit milestones getting into an accelerator building the prototype, they didn't ask. They didn't say, congratulations. They said, just don't burn out. Eventually, I stopped telling them things. But what they didn't see, what no one saw, was how much I was giving. The nights I stayed up sketching wireframes after a 10-hour day. The weekends I skipped birthdays just to fix a glitch. The mornings I cried in the shower because I didn't know how I'd pay rent. I supported my mom when she needed dental work. Helped Daniel's wife with her resume. Sent groceries to my parents when my dad's hours got cut. And not once did I ask for anything back. Because that's what I'd been trained to do. Give everything. Expect nothing. I think that's why Derek's laugh cuts so deep. Because I was already doing the impossible. With no help. With no praise. With no safety net. But his laugh, it told the world I was a joke. And for a second I believed it. The irony is people like Derek always had a net. He came from a wealthy suburb. His dad ran a consulting firm. He interned because of connections. Failed upward. Took big risks because he could. He made bad calls and still got jobs. Started 2 failed startups, both funded. Yet somehow, I was the one being laughed at for trying. I once overheard Derek say in college, Ava's smart, but she's just not founder material. She takes things too seriously. Founder material. As if grit, fire, and self-made determination didn't count. As if being underestimated wasn't the very thing that made me dangerous. They never saw me coming. Because I didn't make noise. I built quietly. I failed quietly. I learned quietly. And then, when I was ready, I launched loudly. That night, when I saw his job application in my inbox, something inside me healed, not out of revenge, but realization. All those years, I was trying to be seen by the wrong people, trying to impress those who had already decided I wasn't enough. Now, I was sitting in a seat they never thought I'd reach.
And they?
They were knocking on my door. After Derek laughed at me that day, something shifted inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded. I remember the sting in my throat as I forced a smile and said, "Thanks for the feedback." He waved it off casually, already looking past me. "Don't take it personal, Ava. It's just this space. It's brutal. Not everyone makes it." That line echoed in my head for days. Not everyone makes it. As if he was some gatekeeper to success. As if I should be grateful he even acknowledged my dreams long enough to laugh at them. That was the last time we spoke. But his words followed me everywhere, into pitch rooms, investor meetings, every rejection email that began with, "Unfortunately, we had decided not to move forward at this time." One of those meetings still haunts me. I pitched SheBuilds to a venture firm downtown. 4 white men in their 40s sat across from me, sipping espresso. They listened politely until I mentioned our goal was to empower underserved female founders with financial tools. The lead investor leaned back in his leather chair. "It's a nice idea, Ava," he said slowly, "but it feels a little niche." I blinked. "Niche?" He smiled. "You're solving a problem, but is it a scalable problem? Most women founders just need mentors, not apps." I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked out with my head held high and my fists clenched so tight, my fingernails left marks in my palm. That same week, my brother texted me, "Daniel, Mom's birthday Sunday. You coming?" Me. "Depends on work. Might be tight." "Daniel, don't make it about your app again. Just be normal. Be normal." As if I was some embarrassing glitch in the family software. I didn't respond. Sunday came and went. I stayed home. Worked on a new feature rollout. No one called. No one checked in. A few days later, I got a message from my mom. "Mom, we missed you Sunday. Daniel said you've been busy. Hope you're still trying to be realistic with that app stuff."
Still trying.
Even she didn't see what I was building. But the final rejection? It came from within. One night, I was fixing a bug that had crashed our dashboard. It was 2:12 a.m. My eyes were burning. I hadn't eaten all day. The team had gone home. My co-founder had quit 2 months earlier. I was alone. And in that moment, I opened my laptop camera. Not to record, not to live stream.
Just to look at myself.
And what I saw wasn't strength or success or ambition. It was a tired, empty woman holding up a crumbling dream and wondering if it was still worth it. I whispered out loud, maybe they were right. The tears came then, quiet and brutal, not because of failure, but because I'd spent years trying to be enough for people who never thought I would be. The next day, I went silent. I didn't quit. I didn't announce a break. I just stopped sharing. No LinkedIn posts. No email updates to friends or family. No text to Daniel or Mom. I pulled back from the world that kept rejecting me, not out of defeat, but because something inside me had started to wake up. They thought they were shutting me down, but what they didn't realize was this. I was just getting started. Silence was never my weapon, until I learned how powerful it could be. In the past, I'd always explained myself. Over-justified. Over-apologized. When I missed family dinners, I'd send paragraphs. When I turned down Derek's project, I'd write him a polite, "Thanks for the opportunity," email, even after his laugh. But after that night, that 2:12 a.m. breakdown in front of my laptop, I made a decision. I would no longer perform. I would no longer explain my dreams to people who had already written their endings. The first thing I did? I canceled the monthly money transfer I had been sending to my parents for the last 2 years.
They never asked me to.
But when Dad's shifts were cut and the furnace broke, I just stepped in. Quietly. Automatically. Like I always had. I never mentioned it. They never thanked me. But that night, I logged into my bank account and clicked Cancel Recurring. A message popped up. Are you sure? I stared at it, then clicked Yes. Not because I didn't care, but because they didn't. I deleted Daniel's number next. Not blocked, just deleted. The texts were always one-sided anyway. Him updating me on things I was excluded from. Family brunches I wasn't invited to. Photos of his daughter's recital with a casual "you should have come." I had been ghosted by my own family, but with a smile. So I let them have their silence. And kept mine. On social media, I stopped posting updates. No more product sneak peeks. No more grinding in silence. Instead, I just worked behind the scenes. Every day. Building. Refining. Coding. Failing. Fixing. I took every niche comment and turned it into clarity. Every "not everyone makes it" insult and turned it into fuel. SheBuilds transformed from a messy prototype to a sleek, scalable platform. We went from 12 users to 4,200. Bootstrapped. No VC. No outside help. I built it like a woman builds a life. Quietly. Fully. Without applause. Friends started asking, "Where have you been? You okay?" I'd smile and say, "Just focusing on myself." That was true. But what I didn't say was, I was finally choosing me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Weeks turned into months. The loneliness didn't hurt like before. It felt like peace. Mornings were slow. I made coffee without checking my phone. I journaled. I listened to podcasts from other women founders who had been laughed at and still built empires. At night, I read books about strategy and scaling. I redesigned our onboarding system, built a funding model for our users, launched an anonymous mentorship chat. It was all mine. No noise. No permission. Just vision, finally free from begging for validation. Then one day, I got a text from an old college friend. "Rachel. Hey, random question. Did you see who just applied to your company?" I froze. I typed back, "No, why?" She replied with a screenshot of a LinkedIn post. Derek Whitman had just been laid off, looking for new opportunities in product or ops, open to startup roles. I blinked. I opened our applicant portal, filtered by recent submissions. And there it was. Name, Derek Whitman. Position applied for, head of product. Status, pending. I stared at his resume. Top schools. Big name companies. Plenty of titles. But beneath all that, A man who once told me I wasn't founder material. Who laughed in my face.
Now?
He wanted to work for me. I didn't feel revenge. Or even vindication. I felt calm. Like something had clicked into place. Not because I'd beat him, but because I no longer needed him to see me. That's the thing about withdrawal. It's not giving up. It's clearing space. Space for yourself. For your peace. For your rise. And once you taste that, you never go back to begging for crumbs. A week after Derek submitted his application, I received a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize. Name: Tasha Williams. Message preview: Hi Ava. I just wanted to say, thank you. I clicked it open, expecting a networking pitch or a request for startup advice. But what I read stopped me cold. Hi, Ava. You probably don't remember me. A day later, another message followed. Also, Daniel mentioned your app is doing great. That's amazing, sweetheart. Your dad and I were thinking maybe we could stop by the office sometime.
Ah.
There it was. The motive. The angle. The photo op. Not we miss you. Not we see you now. Just maybe we could stop by. Like tourists. Even Derek, of all people, sent a follow-up email to his job application. Hi, Ava. Not sure if you saw my submission last week. Would love the chance to chat. I've been following SheBuilds lately, and it's honestly inspiring. You've done something incredible. Let me know if we can hop on a quick call. No pressure. Just proud of you. The same man who once chuckled when I said female-led fintech. Now calling it inspiring. He didn't want to reconnect. He wanted to reposition himself. From dream killer to supporter. From critic to early believer. But I didn't respond. To any of them. No texts. No likes. No calls. Let them sit in their unease. Let them guess where they lost access. Because here's the truth. They weren't reaching out to repair. They were reaching out to rebrand. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail came through a few minutes later. My aunt's voice. Hey Ava, just wanted to say your mom's been feeling really bad lately. I know things got tense last year, but maybe it's time to move past it. Family is still family, right? I sat with that sentence for a long time. Family is still family. As if that justified anything. As if blood was a reason to erase scars. As if love was unconditional but only for them. Then came the real kicker. One night, my friend Rachel forwarded me a screenshot. It was a Facebook post from Daniel's wife. So proud of my sister-in-law, Ava, for everything she's accomplished with SheBuilds. Women lifting women. Attached was a photo of me, taken without permission from my LinkedIn profile. Next to it, she had written, Family ties are forever #ProudSis, #WomenInTech, #GlowUp. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. They didn't clap when I was building. They didn't show up when I was hurting. But now that it looked good on a feed, they wanted to be part of the photo. That's the thing about people like them. They don't want to heal. They want access. To the platform.
To the shine.
To the benefits of being close to someone brave, without ever being brave themselves. But I wasn't angry anymore. Just clear.
They hadn't changed.
They were just responding to the world finally seeing me, and trying to rewrite history before it was too late. But I remember it all. The silences. The smirks. The empty chairs at every launch. And no amount of fake support could unsee that. So I stayed silent. Let them talk to each other. Let them try to craft a narrative. While I kept building mine. Authentic. Earned. Unbought. It was a Friday evening. I was the last one in the office, standing by the window, watching the city melt into golden hour. The week had been a whirlwind. Investor meetings, onboarding new hires, approving a scholarship initiative for single moms learning financial tech. Still, something felt quiet inside me. Not empty. Just still. For once, I didn't feel like I was chasing approval. I wasn't refreshing emails. I wasn't scanning LinkedIn for validation. I was just standing in my space, a space I built breathing. Then my phone lit up. A notification. One new voicemail. No caller ID. I hit play, expecting spam. Instead, it was Tasha again. Hey, Ava. I wasn't sure if I should send this, but my daughter asked about you tonight. She saw your photo in the magazine profile they did on SheBuilds. She said, "Mommy, is that the lady who helped you help me?" And I just started crying. Because yes, that's you. You didn't just give us tools. You gave us back our dignity. You showed me that being invisible didn't mean I was incapable. And now, I show my daughter your picture like a lighthouse. I tell her, that's what a woman can become, even if no one claps at first. Even if they laugh. Even if they leave. She became her own applause. Just wanted you to know.
You didn't build an app.
You built us. I stood in the dark listening to that message over and over. Her words stitched something back inside me I didn't even know was torn. Not from rejection. Not from ambition. But from never being fully seen until now. The next morning, I walked into our monthly user breakfast. We had over 50 women gathered, founders, freelancers, creators. I was planning to just thank them for coming. But one woman stood up before I spoke. "Can I say something?" She walked to the front and turned toward the crowd. Then she looked at me. Ava probably doesn't remember this. But 3 years ago, she met me at a workshop and stayed after to help me build a pitch deck, even when everyone else was packing up. I was broke, tired, embarrassed. And she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't need anyone's permission to start." That line saved me. And today, my startup just hit $250,000 in annual revenue. Because of her. There was silence, the kind that buzzes with emotion. Then applause. Thunderous, messy, emotional applause. I stood frozen. For years, I had gotten so used to silence. To not being invited. To being the helper who never got helped. And here I was surrounded by women clapping not because they had to,
But because they wanted to.
because I mattered. Not for how quietly I suffered, but for how boldly I served. After the event, a teen girl walked up to me with her mom. She couldn't have been older than 14. Her mom said, "She's been following your journey. Made me sign her up for your newsletter." The girl blushed and said, "I want to be a CEO too. Like you." I knelt beside her and smiled. "You already are," I said. "You just haven't picked your idea yet." Her grin lit up the whole room. Later that night, I sat at my desk reading handwritten notes the attendees left. One read, "Thank you for giving me back my voice." Another, "You didn't just teach me how to manage money. You taught me how to stop apologizing for existing." And then one in a shaky, cursive scrawl, "They might have missed your worth, but we never will." I couldn't stop the tears this time. Not out of sadness, but out of arrival. The girl they ignored had become the woman they quoted. The one they excluded had become the one they studied. And the kindness I gave, without cameras, without credit, had returned to me multiplied, magnified, and seen. The knock came on a Tuesday.
Soft.
Hesitant. Almost like they weren't sure they should be there. I already knew who it was. I'd received the text that morning from my mom. "We're in the neighborhood. Thought we might stop by." I never replied. And yet here they were. I didn't open the door right away. I stood in my living room, breathing slowly. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. There was no script in my head. No fantasy monologue. No speech about how they'd hurt me. Just silence. A peaceful, grounded silence. Another knock. Louder this time. Then a voice, Daniel's. "Ava? You home? We wanted to talk."
Talk.
That word used to be my weakness. It used to mean fix it, please them, fold again.
But now?
It just sounded like a trap. I walked toward the door and opened it slowly. They both stood there, my mother and my brother. Dressed neatly. Smiles too forced. Eyes searching. I didn't step aside to invite them in. I just stood in the doorway. My mother was the first to speak. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. You've really done well for yourself." I nodded. "Thank you." She glanced around behind me, maybe hoping to glimpse the office, the team, the trophies. Then she looked back. "We've been talking and we realized things got messy. We'd like to move forward." Daniel chimed in.
Yeah.
"Water under the bridge, right? Family sticks together." That phrase again. Family. So overused. So weaponized. I looked at both of them and smiled. Not a sharp smile. Not bitter. Just calm. I appreciate you coming by, I said. My voice was even. Warm even. But I'm not interested in reconnecting. Their faces shifted. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then subtle panic. Ava, my mom whispered, don't you think this has gone on long enough? It's not about grudges, I said. It's about boundaries. But we're family, Daniel said louder now. I took a slow breath. I was family when I cried at your graduation, even though you laughed at my dreams. I was family when I cheered for all of you, even when no one clapped for me. I was family when I built something from nothing, and you all called it cute. I was family when you left me out, silenced me, minimized me. I paused. But now that it's successful, now that it's public, now you want back in. They were quiet. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to convince them. Because I wasn't speaking for them anymore. I was speaking for me. I'm not angry, I added. I'm clear. My mother blinked, tears threatening, but not quite falling. Daniel looked down at the ground. We didn't know, he muttered. I nodded. And you never asked. Then I stepped back inside and gently closed the door. No slam. No drama. Just peace. The final no wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. Because it wasn't about punishing them. It was about protecting me. I sat back down at my desk. Outside the window, the light was beginning to shift. Golden hour again. My calendar pinged, another meeting with a venture partner. But I paused for just a second and smiled to myself. I didn't owe anyone a second chance at my light, especially not the ones who mocked it when it was just a spark. And for the first time in my life, I felt full, not because they finally showed up,
But because I no longer needed them to.
If you had told me years ago that I'd say no and feel peace instead of guilt, I wouldn't have believed you. I thought healing meant reconciliation. I thought love had to be earned, even when it hurt. I thought if I just worked harder, stayed softer, kept sacrificing, eventually they'd see me. Eventually they'd stay. But the truth? Some people don't change when you become more valuable. They just become more strategic. And some wounds don't heal by reopening old doors. They heal when you build new ones, with your own name on them. I spent years being the quiet one. The one who clapped for everyone else. The one who swallowed the lump in her throat and called it strength. But silence isn't always noble. Sometimes it's survival. And survival is holy. To the woman watching this, still waiting for the apology that never came, still hoping to be invited, seen, understood. Let me say this clearly. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You are just surrounded by people who benefited from your doubt. And now you get to build a life without begging for space in theirs. Let them say you changed. Let them call you cold or distant or dramatic. Because the truth is, you didn't become colder. You just stopped burning your light for people who kept you in the shadows. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. And now you know. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not show up.